Hey, good to see you again. Merry Christmas. By the way, up you're doing well, staying warm, enjoying the season. Now, before we dive into today's story, I need you to do me a favor. And I'm being serious here, okay? I need you to hit that subscribe button like you're swatting away a mosquito at a summer barbecue. Just bam, done. Why? Because apparently, I'm the only one brave enough to tell you what's really going on, and you need these updates. Alright, good. Now, let's get into it. So here's the headline that's got everyone talking. Donald Trump, the man who basically invented the MAGA movement, is now getting pushed around by his own people. Yeah, you heard that right. The guy who says I know what MAGA wants better than anybody else's words, not mine, ass suddenly facing some serious blowback from the red hat crowd. And it's not just a little grumbling on social media. We're talking about actual cracks forming in what was supposed to be his bulletproof base. Now, between you and me, I've been watching this unfold for weeks, and it's fascinating. Trump's approval rating among his hardcore MAGA supporters has dropped 8 points since April. That might not sound like much, but when you're talking about people who literally worship this guy, that's a seismic shift. These are the folks who showed up to rallies in the rain, who bought the hats, the flags, the whole 9 yards. And now, they're saying things like, "Where's my president?" on social media. That's not a good sign. The tension really started bubbling up over a few key issues: immigration visas, his comments about bringing in foreign workers, and that whole Epstein files mess that just won't go away. Trump gave an interview recently where he basically said America doesn't have enough talented people and needs to bring in more foreign workers through something called H-1B visas. Well, let me tell you, that did not go over well with the MAGA faithful. We're talking about people who elected him specifically to put America first, and now he's telling them Americans aren't talented enough. Yeah, that landed like a lead balloon at a birthday party. And here's where it gets really interesting. It's not just random trolls on the internet who are upset. We're talking about Marjorie Taylor Greenies, that Marjorie Taylor Greene calling Trump out. Steve Bannon, his former chief strategist, is blasting his policies. Even Kevin Sorbo, the guy who played Hercules in the 90s, jumped into the fray saying Trump's comments will cost Republicans the midterms. When Hercules is mad at you, you know something's gone wrong. So what's really happening here? Is Trump losing control of the movement he created? Or is this just a temporary bump in the road? That's what we're going to explore today. Stick with me. Alright, let's break down what's actually going on here, because there's a lot of no's and we need to separate the signal from the static. The core issue revolves around something called the H-1B visa program. Now I know, visa policy isn't exactly thrilling dinner conversation, but stay with me because this is important. The H-1B visa allows companies to bring in highly skilled foreign workers, engineers, computer scientists, that kind of thing, to work in the United States temporarily. Tech companies love this program because, let's be honest, Silicon Valley needs talent, and they argue there aren't enough Americans with these specialized skills. But the MAGA movement, they see it differently. To them, this is about American jobs going to foreigners, and that flies directly in the face of everything they believe Trump stands for. So here's what happened. Trump did an interview with Laura Ingraham on Fox News in November, and she pressed him on the H-1B issue. She basically said, "Mr. President, we have plenty of talented people here in America." And Trump replied, and I'm paraphrasing here, "No, you don't. You don't have certain talents." He went on to say you can't just take people off an unemployment line and expect them to build missiles. Which, okay, fair point about missile building, but the way he said it, it came across like he was saying Americans just aren't good enough. And that's not what his base wanted to hear. The backlash was immediate and brutal. People who have been Trump supporters since day one were suddenly questioning everything. The Hodgetwins, those conservative commentary guys, said Trump needs to fire every advisor telling him to say this stuff. Savannah Hernandez, a big MAGA influencer, called it disheartening and said Trump needs to get out of his bubble. And then there's Elon Musk, who's been defending the H-1B program like his life depends on it, which, to be fair, his companies kind of do rely on these visas. Now, before we go further, if you're finding this useful, do me a solid and hit that like button. It helps more people see this stuff, and trust me, they need to know what's happening. Here's where it gets complicated. Trump has always had this weird relationship with immigration. On the campaign trail, he's Mr. Build the Wall, deport everyone, America first all the way. But in practice, he's used these visa programs at his own properties for years. He even told the New York Post, "I've always liked the visas. I have many H-1B visas on my properties." So there's this disconnect between campaign Trump and actual policy Trump, and his supporters are finally noticing. The real split here is between two factions in Trump's coalition. On one side, you've got the tech billionaires Musk, Vivek Ramaswamy, that crowd don't need these foreign workers for their companies. On the other side, you've got the original MAGA base, working class Americans, many of them white, who feel like they've been left behind by globalization. These are the people who put Trump in office because they believed he'd fight for them. And now they're watching him cozy up to Silicon Valley billionaires who want to import workers from India and China. Musk even said he'd go to war over this issue. Actually threatened to go to war to protect H-1B visas. That's a pretty strong position for a guy who's supposed to be helping Trump drain the swamp. Now let's talk about the reactions, because this is where things get really spicy. You've got basically three camps forming here, and they're all at each other's throats like cats in a sack. First, you've got the hardline MAGA faction. These are people like Steve Bannon, Laura Loomer, and a bunch of grassroots conservatives who are absolutely furious. Bannon went on his podcast and called the H-1B program a scam. He said the entire immigration system is gamed by the tech overlords, and that people are furious about it. And you know what? He's not wrong about people being mad. The phones in Republican congressional offices were ringing off the hook with angry constituents. Then you've got the tech billionaire faction Musk and Ramaswamy leading the charge. Musk has been all over social media defending foreign workers, saying America doesn't have enough talented engineers. He literally told critics to, and I quote, "Take a big step back and you know what yourself in the face." Classy guy Dadalin. He even started removing verification badges from conservatives on Twitter. Sorry, so criticized him. So much for free speech absolutism, huh? And in the middle, you've got Trump, trying to play both sides like a politician at a buffet, loading up his plate with whatever keeps everyone happy. He tells the MAGA base he's still their guy, and turns around and tells Musk's crowd that he supports H-1B visas. It's political gymnastics, and honestly, it's getting harder for him to stick the landing. But here's what really caught my attention. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yes, the same woman who's been one of Trump's most loyal defenders. Someone who would probably take a bullet for the guy, called him out publicly. After Trump called her Marjorie Taylor Greene and a raving lunatic during this whole mess, she responded with basically a disappointed parent tone. I forgive him and I will pray for him to return to his original MAGA promises. That's like your biggest fan saying, I love you, but you're screwing this up. When you lose Marjorie Taylor Greene, you know you've gone off script. The media's been having a field day with this, of course. Liberal outlets are talking about MAGA civil war. Conservative outlets are trying to downplay it, and Fox News, Trump's usual safe space, even had hosts pushing back on him. Laura Ingraham, who did that interview, came back the next day and continued pressing on the issue. Well, Kane said it's hard to stomach when you hear that Americans aren't talented enough. These are people who normally carry water for Trump, and even they're uncomfortable. Meanwhile, polls are showing the damage. That NBC News survey I mentioned earlier, they found that Trump's strong approval among MAGA Republicans dropped from 78% to 70%. Nah, 70% is still high, don't get me wrong, but that 8-point drop represents hundreds of thousands of people who are questioning their support. And here's the kicker. Fewer Republicans are even identifying as part of the MAGA movement anymore. In April, it was a majority. Now, it's split 50-50 between traditional Republicans and MAGA Republicans. You know what this reminds me of? It's like watching someone try to ride two horses going in different directions. Eventually, something's gotta give. Either Trump commits to one side, or he falls flat on his face. And with the midterms coming up, Republicans are getting nervous. Because if Trump can't control his own movement, what does that mean for them? Let's get into the deeper details here. The stuff that's happening behind the scenes that most people aren't talking about. Because this tension isn't just about visas or immigration policy, it's about power, money, and who really controls the Republican Party. Here's something interesting. During Trump's first term, he actually restricted H-1B visas. He signed a Buy American and Hire American executive order, put in place rules to cut down on these visas, even froze the program temporarily during COVID. So the Trump of 2017 was doing exactly what his base wanted. But Trump of 2025, he's singing a completely different tune. What changed? Well, for one thing, his inner circle changed. Trump's surrounded now by tech billionaires who've basically bought their way into his orbit. Elon Musk alone spent hundreds of millions helping Trump get elected, and now he's practically living at Mar-a-Lago. These guys need H-1B workers for their companies. Tesla won over 700 new H-1B visas in 2024, more than double from the year before. So when Trump's making policy decisions, he's got billionaires in one ear saying we need these visas, and his grassroots base in the other ear saying America first. Guess which voice is louder when you're sitting in a luxury box at a football game with the richest man in the world? And it's not just H-1B visas causing problems. Trump told Ingraham that having 600,000 Chinese students in America is important for universities to stay in business. Again, this went over like a lead balloon. His supporters are worried about Chinese spying, intellectual property theft, all that stuff, and Trump's over here saying we need more Chinese students. The cognitive dissonance is real. Then there's the Epstein files situation, which is a whole other can of worms. Trump initially opposed releasing documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, and caved to pressure from his own movement. The House voted for 127-1 to release them, and Trump couldn't stop it. That's not the sign of a president in control. And when the files did come out, they didn't include the so-called client list that everyone was waiting for, which made people even angrier. They felt like they'd been promised transparency and got nothing. Here's where it gets really interesting from a political strategy standpoint. Trump's betting that his personal loyalty from the base is strong enough to weather these controversies. And historically, he's been right. The man could probably rob a bank and his supporters would find a way to justify it. But there are limits to that loyalty, and he might be testing them. Quick as a day, if you haven't liked this video yet, now's a good time. Just saying. Republicans in Congress are getting nervous because they're caught in the middle. Do they stick with Trump and risk alienating voters who are mad about these issues? Or do they break from Trump and risk losing the MAGA base entirely? It's a no-win situation. We've already seen Senate Republicans vote to rescind some of Trump's tariffs on Brazil, and Canada, that's them pushing back, showing they won't just rubber stamp everything. Indiana state legislators ignored Trump's demands to redraw congressional districts. These are small rebellions, but they're happening. The affordability crisis isn't helping either. Trump told Graham that concerns about affordability were a Democratic con job, which is tone deaf when Americans are actually struggling with costs. He talked about 50-year mortgages like it's no big deal. And people are sitting at home thinking I can barely afford a 30-year mortgage, and this guy thinks 50 years is fine. It's disconnect after disconnect, and it's adding up. When you promise a manufacturing renaissance and economic boom and neither materializes, people get impatient. And MAGA folks, they're not known for their patience. So where does this leave us? What does all this mean for Trump, for MAGA, for the Republican Party, and honestly, for the country? Because this isn't just political drama, this has real consequences. First, let's talk about the immediate impact. Trump's approval rating overall is at 42%, with 58% disapproving. That's not great for a president who needs to get things done. More importantly, 64% of Americans think the country's on the wrong track, and that includes a growing number of people who voted for Trump. When your own voters are losing faith, you've got a problem. The midterms are coming up, and historically, the party in power loses seats. If Trump can't energize his base because they're mad at him, Republicans could get demolished. But here's the bigger question, is Trump still leading the MAGA movement, or is the movement now leading him? Because what we're seeing is a role reversal. Trump created MAGA, shaped it, controlled it completely. But now, the movement's got its own momentum, its own demands, its own identity separate from Trump. And when Trump deviates from what they expect, they push back hard. That's actually kind of remarkable when you think about it. Trump spent years training his supporters to be loyal, to trust him over everyone else, to see him as infallible. And now that same loyalty is creating expectations he might not be able to meet. There's also the question of what happens after Trump. He can't run again in 2028. Constitution's pretty clear on that, despite what he jokes about. So who takes over MAGA? Is it J.D. Vance, Trump Jr., someone else entirely? And will that person face the same tensions between the tech billionaire wing and the working class base? Because those tensions aren't going away. If anything, they're getting worse. Some political analysts think MAGA will outlast Trump. They point out that he fundamentally changed the Republican Party, that it'll never go back to what it was before him. The old guard people like Mitch McConnell are basically done. The party belongs to MAGA now. But others argue that MAGA is a cult of personality, and without Trump on the ballot, the movement splinters or stays home. We saw hints of that in some recent local elections, where Republicans lost in areas Trump won big. Turns out, people vote for Trump, not necessarily for his endorsed candidates. Looking ahead, Trump's got some tough choices to make. Does he double down on the tech billionaire alliance and risk losing his base? Or does he pivot back to pure America First populism and risk losing financial support from Silicon Valley? It's a tightrope walk, and Trump's never been great at subtlety. My guess, he'll keep trying to play both sides, making promises to everyone and hoping nobody notices the contradictions. That strategy's worked for him before, but the margin for error is getting smaller. For the rest of us, this is important to watch because it shows something fundamental about politics. Loyalty is conditional. Even the most devoted supporters have limits, and when you cross those limits, there are consequences. Trump's finding that out the hard way. The movement he created is now holding him accountable, and that's actually kind of healthy for democracy, even if it's messy. So that's the situation. Trump versus MAGA, billionaires versus the base, the old promises versus new realities. It's complicated, it's evolving, and honestly, nobody knows exactly how it's going to play out. But I'll be here watching it, breaking it down for you, making sense of the chaos. Because that's what we do here. Before you go, 3 things. 1. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. 2. Like this video, it really helps. And 3. Drop a comment and let me know what you think. Is Trump losing control of MAGA? Can he bounce back? I want to hear your thoughts. Until next time, I'm Jimmy Lemo, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, stay informed, and have a great rest of your day.